Well, hello everyone. Someone at the Seymour Duncan Guitar forum asked me if I can answer some questions. He's going to start a thread and asked me if I can answer some questions about my guitars and my guitar building. And I said, why not? Why not? Well, here it goes. And maybe there's some things I can clarify for you that you're misunderstanding, which is very common about myself and my work. So the first question is, how do you decide where the knobs and switches go? I didn't think that was that much of an important factor, considering that many more traditional guitars, mainly thinking of Gibson, in fact, they're quite out of the way for modern players. So what do I do with switches and knobs? Well, it's what you would do. I want to make them as accessible as possible to the player while he's playing. So I don't know which guitar model the questioner is referring to, but if you take a guitar like this Zachary Strat, Z Strat that I call it, this is a fairly new body that I'm building. You could be accurate in saying it's exact copy of a Fender Strat, a vintage Fender Strat, because what I did is I managed to find a original drawing for the Fender Strat, the blueprint, and I went off of that blueprint to trace it 100% full size. So everything in terms of the main dimensions is absolutely accurate on this particular guitar. Now, what I did notice is the volume knob being usually right here, higher up on a Strat, is in the way of the arm. You can't really, it's right underneath the arm as you're playing it. So what I did is I lowered it somewhat so that you could still get around the arm and do volume swells with it, right? It's right where the hand goes. I mean, it goes down here, doesn't it? Does it not? Does it not go? It's easy to reach. And you've got your pickup selectors here, so it's all in the range of the motion, right? In the direction that your hand goes anyway. So you get your pickup selectors here. The tone knob can be out of the way because I personally don't use the tone knob as I play usually, and if I do, I just reach down. See, it's all in the line of the picking motion, the controls. All right. Now, on a traditional Strat, in this spot here, you have the jack. That's where the jack goes, and I prefer to have it on the side of the body. So here I would have an open spot, which would not be aesthetically balanced. And I don't want to cram in the switches right here because it would be in line of the picking motion, right? So this is a perfect spot to put the switches. And on the Z Strat, I chose to be able to access every pickup option, and so I put them in this spot, angled specifically so that the hand naturally has access to it as your forearm moves down, as if you were picking the guitar. Right? And there are 3 on-off switches, so basically one for each pickup. So you can make the guitar go dead by switching all the switches off and having them in the off position. So if you, this one is the neck. Middle. And bridge by itself. then you've got the combinations, middle and neck. And you have bridge in middle. And then you have bridge and neck, which you don't get on a regular Strat. And you have all three pickups at the same time, which you also don't get on a traditional Strat. So, the same goes for the Zachary Telly. So it's very easy to reach it for volume swells. And again, you got the tone here, and then right beside it, to make it aesthetically pleasing, you have the Les Paul switch for this particular guitar. And everything is in line with the picking motion. So I'm not sure why that was not evident, or maybe you don't think it's the best way to have it, or what it may be, but that's the way I do it. All right, the second question is, do you freehand the body carving on your guitars? What does that mean, body carving? You mean the actual shape of the bodies? The actual shape of the bodies is done by a template. So again, this is another Z Strat. What it is, it's an exact shape of a vintage Fender Stratocaster, because let's face it, that body is genius. It's a masterpiece. Masterpiece of ergonomics, balance, everything else. What I did is just a few little minor things which don't take away from the actual shape of the guitar I did not like. And one was the heel, the neck joint area. It's just cut off straight like that in a very industrial type of crude manner. And your hand runs into this sharp edge here. So I figured, well, that can be improved by rounding it off so that it matches the horns as well, aesthetically. And it's also very pleasing for the hand. And what I also did here is I shaved it down on this side. So when you're reaching for the high notes, it's less wood there for you to deal with in the heel area. Other than that, it's the exact same thickness, exact same shape, exact same contouring as a vintage Fender Strat. No reason to change things that are integral to the traditional design of the guitar and do not need changing, right? It's my first time using this camera and I'm trying to set it up. Before, I wasn't getting a good tone in the videos. I acknowledge that because I didn't realize the stupid little cheap built-in microphone of the camera was in front of the pop-up screen of the camera, and the amp was behind the camera, so the screen was blocking all the sound. So what you were getting is you were getting a lot of you're getting the guitar a lot of acoustically. You were hearing the electric guitar acoustically, and oh boy, the tone is not good. No, that was what the problem was. This is a little bit better, but it's still not a professional recording, obviously. So getting back to the body here, so this is done by template. So every Z Strat is going to have the exact same body. Now, it's going to vary a little bit. The actual, contouring is going to vary a little bit. Some are going to be a little bit taken down more, by a few millimeters than others will. But it's not something that you will notice because, well, and it's to be expected because anything handmade is going to be variable. It's going to be spontaneous. It's like improvising a solo. No two solos are going to be exactly alike. Making a guitar by hand means that every operation, be it a hand tool or a power tool, is guided by hand. Guided by hand. So if I'm using a router, one wrong move, it's ruined. The piece is ruined, right? If I'm using a hand sander, one wrong move, and it's ruined. In the mass production factories, there's actually, even though they try not to admit this to you and try to deceive you in thinking that there's a lot of hand manufacturing, hand craftsmanship going on, there isn't. The only hand craftsmanship that they were going to leave to human fallibility is anything that is absolutely necessary that they cannot automate. So when you're seeing hand sanding done on a CNC computer-controlled made guitar, body or neck, what they're doing is they're removing the tool marks from the CNC machine. And they pretty well have to do that by hand. So it's very minimal hand craftsmanship. Even things like the nuts are pre-manufactured, pre-slotted. They may do the final adjustment, final height of the strings. Like these particular nuts, for instance, take me 2 hours to make one. That is the truth. It's 2 hours to make one of these nuts, and because I start from a blank, I use my own proprietary material, very special material. So the nut is absolutely essential to the performance and the design of the Zachary guitar. And it's got to be fitted in every way, and every slot has got to be cut, and it's got to be just perfect. And these guitars are made for high performance playing, so it's not something that is made for somebody who doesn't demand high performance out of a guitar. That's why it's critical that you are a serious player so that you can make use of it. okay? Because if you're not a serious player, what are you going to do with it? You know, you can't do much with it. I think that covers the body, does it not? The body on an electric guitar is one of the parts that doesn't have to be precise. Well, yeah, it's got to be precise. Are you getting this body, or are you getting something close to this body? No, you want to get the exact body. Trust me. The person asking these questions is probably quite young. I've been building guitars for 22 years, so I've been probably building guitars longer and have been on the internet from day one, believe it or not. Longer than a lot of people who are discovering my work have been alive. So you may not be familiar with how I do things. You have to be knowledgeable about guitars technically, historically, and you have to understand what I do and why I do it. And then if you can do all that, then there's going to be no misunderstanding and no jumping to conclusions and assumptions about my work. Unlike the bridge and tuners. Oh, you mean the placement of the bridge and tuners? Well, yeah, it's got to be precise because you got to align the strings, right? It's got to be totally precise. And I do it all by human measurement. On a CNC machine, it's all plotted and, you know, and it's done. As long, you know, the hero there, the craftsman there is the computer programmer. He's got to do it right. It's not the actual people that are building the guitars. So, I'm not into business. I'm not into making money. I'm not into promotion. I'm into one thing, is building. That's what defines a guitar builder. Okay? Somebody who built a guitar 30 years ago and started a company is not a guitar builder. A guitar builder, I love to build. Nothing else. I need to create. It's in my blood. If I don't create, I get sick. I love to be in the shop actually creating a work of art. Being creative. That's what I do. It's not promotion. It's not pandering to customers. It's not trying to nice you to death. None of that. Everything is focused. The reason I'm doing this is not to have a successful company worldwide, blah, 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 you know, like exporting these everywhere, mass producing them, sell as many as I can, make as many. No, I'm not into that. I'm into making one guitar at a time for my own thrill. And you know what? It's painful to sell any one of these guitars. If it's not painful for you to sell a guitar, you are not a guitar builder. You are not an artist. It's got to be painful to sell it. Understand? So those people out there who are masquerading as guitar builders, luthiers, deceiving you every day, thinking that they actually built your guitar. Oh my God. They've got nothing to do with guitar building. A guitar builder is someone who is in the shop and who is cutting wood, shaping wood, measuring wood, and creating something by hand. Not the promotion guy, the face of a company, the figurehead, the puppet is not a guitar builder. The guy that goes around big, huge music stores and gives seminars is not a guitar builder. You have to understand this. And the more you know about the way, well, the world functions, life functions, the more you will realize when you're being deceived. And these people are masquerading as guitar builders, guitar designers, and they're none of it. Have you ever seen them build a guitar? No, you haven't. So the more you know, the more knowledgeable you are, the more awake you are, the more you are going to be immune to deception. And your actual purchasing style, habits are going to vastly change based on your knowledge. The snake oil salesmen who spend all their time in promotion, in sales, they are not guitar builders. So don't confuse the two, please. Somebody who is the figurehead of a apparently successful guitar manufacturing company is not a guitar builder. A guitar builder is actually doing it day in and day out. That's what a guitar builder is. So if you don't feel it in your blood, in your bones, you're not a guitar builder. You're other things. You may be good at other things, but you're not a guitar builder. That's where my passion comes from. And if I'm creating, I don't care if I'm making myself one more guitar, I'm excited. I get an inspiration, I develop a theme. Like, for instance, how about if I made a Z Strat with a Carina body and a rosewood neck? Boy, that would be cool. To be clear, that's a rosewood neck, not a neck with a rosewood fingerboard. A completely solid rosewood neck. That one's coming up. And then I have to consider the aesthetic balance and the actual physical balance of these things. You don't put a light neck on a heavy body or a heavy neck on a light body. And you also have to do it aesthetically, and you have to respect tradition as well. For instance, I'm never going to put a humbucker in the bridge position of a Telecaster, simply because then it ceases to be a Telecaster. You want to keep all the integral features which defines that model guitar in terms of tradition, in terms of history. I mean, on a Telecaster, all right, it's permissible to vary the neck pickup. You can put a P90 in there, cool. You can even put a humbucker in there, cool. But what defines a Tele is that bridge pickup. You got to get the Telecaster tone to have a Telecaster. Do you carve the bodies by hand to agree with the grain of the wood? I'm not quite sure what that means, so I can't really answer that. I look at a piece of wood and I say I can envision the guitar, what it's going to look like. And for instance, this was inspired by a photograph on the internet of one of those 80s Strats which were modified, and they put humbuckers in it, and they put a Floyd Rose in it, and they changed the tuners on it, and you know, those guitars really defined the music and the playing of the 80s. And I figured, well, you know, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it a little bit my way. I don't use locking tremolos because I don't need to. I don't think there's any guitar in the world that stays in tune better than these. I mean, it's quite phenomenal. I am blown away myself, actually. And I'm tired of doing videos to show the tuning of these things. But This is not in standard tuning right now. I pretty well picked the wrong guitar. So I also invented a system for these floating bridges so that you can put it into non-standard tuning and not worry about the floating aspect of the bridge. And so when that happens, you do lose your upward mobility of the bridge. Wow. So you can't go up, but you can go down. Alright, so what we have here is the ZS. Not the Z Strat, the ZS. It's a modified version. It's my version now of the Strat. And what it is again, it's an exact Strat body, except the bottom horn is cut down. Because actually, if you put a 24 fret neck on a Strat, the high fret access is actually not that good, believe it or not. You guys are used to playing 21 and 22 fret Strats, but I always go with 24, sometimes 26 frets. I want to have the full 2 octaves. It also has other advantages by making the neck longer here for better stability. So the neck screws are further apart. The further apart from each other, these two from these two, the neck screws are, the more stability you have in the coupling of the neck, right? That's obvious, right? Actually, I've read that some of you didn't pick that up, but it should be totally obvious and logical. And so I get extra space here for stronger neck joint, and because a Strat would have its these screws would end up around here, right? So there's not that much joint there for leverage. 3 changes for the ZS as opposed to the Z Strat. So 3 changes I have made to the traditional Strat body. On the ZS, it's got unbelievable high fret access because this is cut away, okay? And also, it's cut away over here. It ends up being a smaller body even though the perimeter follows the exact vintage Stratocaster shape. And by doing this, you save a little bit of weight. Obviously, you take this wood away, so you get a lighter body. And on the ZS, I also make it a few millimeters thinner than the Stratocaster body. The Stratocaster body is 44.5 millimeters thick, and this is at 42. So again, you're saving weight. It's a little bit more manageable because it's thinner, more compact, a little bit more comfortable. And otherwise, it's the same. Now, this particular configuration has a humbucker here, as you can see it, but this is a push-pull tone knob, and puts this humbucker into single coil mode. And the screw poles are always my active coil in single coil mode. So you can use this as a traditional Strat if you have the humbucker in single coil mode. It's quite cool. And versatile. Again, the same switches, same on-off switches for each pickup, and then you've got the coil switch for the tone. In the rear, I don't bother with a cover. It's not needed. I like to see things visible. Everything I do it for simplicity reasons. Simplicity is something that appeals to me greatly. If you can achieve something in the most simplest way, then that appeals to me greatly. And then, of course, it's got the spike neck joint so that the wood of the neck doesn't actually touch the wood of the body. It sits on a steel spike, and you get a lot more resonance and sustain out of the guitar. So that's very unique. I like it, and I'm staying with it. And it's also a very effective angle adjustment of the neck. So these things can be set up perfectly. And very easily, precisely, with the neck tilt spike adjustment. Again, high performance guitar for high performance players. Single coil humbucker, full humbucker. Single coil. Full humbucker. The interesting thing about this year is, for the first time, I started winding my own pickups. So this is a handmade, by me, humbucker. And I'm very excited about that because I don't have to depend on any pickup maker to make pickups exactly the way I want it. So I completely balance this pickup so that in single coil mode it balances with the traditional Strat single coils. These are not made by me, the single coils, but they will be in the future. I'm making more and more and more pickups now. I've got my own winder. I got all the materials needed. I got the different coil wire gauges. So I'm going to be doing some pretty cool stuff in that area. And also these pickups are connected by little mini connectors underneath the pickups. So if you want to change pickups, which I don't recommend because I match it up perfectly, but let's say if I'm doing experimentation on different pickups, before I complete the guitar, I do not have to do any soldering. The entire harness It's permanent. It's soldered in. And all I have to do is unhook it. Disconnect the pickup from the harness through the little mini connectors on both the harness and the pickup, male and female. Take the pickup out, put another pickup with the same type of connector on it. And that goes for the single coils as well. The pickups just plug in to the harness and it just connects in. So take the strings off and the pickup, you can change the pickups. So it's very convenient that way. I always set it up with 2 specially gauged springs. These are not regular springs, and a fully floating tremolo, if you can see that. So you've got a lot of all the way down. And then so let's just go through this again here. So I can do that all day, and then let's play an E chord for you. See that? It blows my mind as well, okay? Trust me. This is a totally clean amp now. After all that. So let's do it again. E chord again. So there you go. You hardly ever have to tune these guitars, which is, you know, tremendous. It's unheard of. You don't need a locking tremolo. I wasn't around in building guitars in 1978 so that I could get to Eddie Van Halen in time. But he wouldn't have needed a locking tremolo. It all works as a system, so if you disturb any part of that system, it falls apart. You're screwed. And then you have yourself just a regular guitar, which doesn't stay in tune. So everything is designed, the nut, the retainer bar material. Of course, it's got locking tuners. You don't need any tools for the bridge. You don't need any tools for the nut to lock it. Nothing is locked. Everything is just in motion, perfect motion. The material for the nut and the retainer bar is possibly the most slippery material in the world. Another important part of that system is the strings. Now, I don't use strings that you buy in the store. Zachary strings are not commercially available. They never have been. I used to sell them myself worldwide. I don't do that any longer. I'm the one that invented something called Zachary Optimum Gauges, or Zachary Optimum Tensions to be more exact. And I used to sell these strings. I don't sell them anymore. They're only available to Zachary guitar owners. And what they are, I was the one that added design to string sets, both guitar and bass string sets. I'm the one that invented optimized string sets for bass and guitar. And what that entails is every string within the set has to be of a certain tension so that it corresponds to every other string within the set. Therefore, no strings are over-tensioned and no strings are under-tensioned within the set. So everything feels completely even to the guitar in terms of the guitar functions and to the player. And I did that about 25 years ago now, when I noticed that there was something seriously wrong with guitar strings, and every manufacturer is giving you the same damn sets with no thought, no design, nothing behind why they're doing it. And so I fixed that, and it's a huge improvement in how the guitar can function physically. What they're called is optimized strings, in which every string is tensioned to be in balance to every other string within the set. There is a system that every string set follows, in which every string must have a specific tension for it to be balanced within the set and to every other string in the set. The commercially available string sets are very poorly designed, or to be more accurate, there is no design involved. So your set is unbalanced. The strings that you're playing within your set are unbalanced. Each string does not correspond to the other strings in terms of a systematic balance within the set. Therefore, some strings are under tensioned, some strings are over tensioned within the set, and a lot of the times the guitars cannot function to their optimum potential because the string tension is not correct within the set. And there's a system that I follow. So magically, your guitar simply functions physically better because of the optimized tension of the strings, the balance, the tension balance of the strings. The guitar functions better, and it also feels better to the player, feels balanced to the player, and your lower strings are no longer under tensioned. This is extremely important for shorter scale guitars like a Gibson scale, and also basses. Basses are terribly out of balance in terms of tension, in terms of the string set being out of balance with itself in terms of tension. Things like baritone guitars hardly function at all. Things like 7-string guitars, 8-string guitars, just awful. The string companies are, may I say, morons. They don't know anything about what they're doing. And so they're all giving you basically the same damn string set. And if your tension is not correct within the set, you have nothing. It doesn't matter what material the strings are made of or anything like that. It means nothing if your tensions are not correct. So within the system, and one of the reasons it stays in tune so well is because of the string set, the Zachary Optimum Gauges set. But that's a whole nother topic, of course. I just thought I'd mention it. The entire Zachary guitar, from one end to the other, is an integral system. And everything works together. If you disturb any part of it, it will no longer work together. It'll fall apart. It'll cease to perform the way it's designed to perform. This is why you have to have knowledge, guitar knowledge, technical knowledge, if you're going to appreciate a Zachary guitar. If you don't, then basically any other guitar you buy, you're buying the same guitar, regardless of manufacturer. They all make the same guitar, more or less. So if you want to get something that truly works it has to have a lot of design behind it. Not just nostalgia, not colors, not visuals, not endorsers, who plays it. It should have nothing to do with your guitar hero and what he played in 1964. It has to work physically. And that requires that every single component is thought out and designed to work with every other component. I've gone through years of experimentation with that, and but it's not very known, which is perfectly fine with me. I enjoy it, and people who buy my guitars enjoy it. I don't pay any musicians to endorse my things. I always found endorsements, I always found that distasteful. Something was wrong about that. Paying somebody to tell others, paying somebody to sell your stuff, I mean, obviously it's got no credibility from the very start. To like your stuff, paying them to like your stuff, paying them to play your stuff, that's weird. But people eat it up. People accept it. You should never accept that. It's wrong. Steve Vai has got to buy his fucking guitar. He's got to pay for it. If he comes to me, he's going to pay exactly the same price as anybody else pays. There's no fucking way I'm giving it to him. Just so he can tell people it's good? Nah. No. He wants to play my guitar, he's got to pay. Just like everybody else. See, this whole issue with endorsements, I mean, it really got out of hand starting possibly in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It just got way out of hand. Oh my God. It's like, you know, these guitar players were endorsing everything, you know, including the nail clippers they use or whatever. And it's not a statement on them, it's a statement on you. All right? Because you have to be told what's good. Which means that you on your own cannot make that decision. Why? Because obviously you don't have the knowledge. So someone's got to tell you, buy this, it's good. Oh, okay, I'll buy that. You know, whoever. Fill in the blank, whoever name you want to choose. Slash tells me it's good, so I'm going to buy it. Do you know if it's good? Is it good for you? Don't you know more about guitars than Slash does? You should. So it's really a statement on the consumer, on the guitar consumer, that you need endorsements so much. Oh my God, you can't survive without endorsements. So think about that one. Some dumbass said that, well, your guitars must not be very good because no pro plays them. Well, I can get anybody can get any pro to play their guitar. All you have to do is pay them. That's the way the industry has always worked. You can have them play a toilet seat if you pay them enough to do it. So that doesn't mean anything. You could have the greatest guitar in the world, they won't touch it because they need the money, especially these days when it's very hard to make a living playing music. So that doesn't mean anything. As soon as you see something endorsed, you should be very skeptical of it. Okay? No piece of gear should be endorsed by paid endorsers. What's the next question here? What is your design process? All of your guitars, in and of themselves, appear to be unique. Could you give me an example of how you come up with ideas behind one or two of your guitars? Well, I made a lot of different body styles. I made completely hollow guitars. I made semi-hollow guitars. I made many different solid bodies, tremolo, the Fender style tremolo stuff, the Bixby style tremolo stuff. What else? You can see it all on my old original website, which is still up on the internet under a different URL now, because I've been in the process of very, very slowly building my new website. The original website looks like it was something made by a 5-year-old in 1996. You know why? Well, it wasn't made by a 5-year-old, but it was made in 1996. But the point is that it's got every guitar on there, almost, from the first guitar I ever made. And it's in chronological order. The serial number is the date of completion of every guitar. So you can pinpoint every guitar on there and see a whole bunch of pictures, high resolution pictures. And you can see all the different types of guitars, basses that I've made. And then the newest guitars are on my current new website under the URL zacharyguitars.com. What's amazing that in about 22 years I made we're almost there, 200 guitars. Now, what's amazing by that is it's all done by one person with these two hands. And not many can fucking claim that. Understand? And if you can do it, you got my admiration. So, the bodies are different. The types of guitars in terms of hollowness is different. You got to understand that many things can vary. The scale lengths vary. The body style varies. The body shapes vary. The pickups may vary. The finish and the color may vary. The woods certainly vary. The hardware may vary. But in terms of DNA, it's the same guitar. And what's really important is the theme. The theme of each guitar is different. That's where people realize and they believe that every guitar is so different. Well, if you have a certain model that I make, let's say the Z2, it's still a Z2 with all the different variables involved. A Z2 could be a 7-string with a 26-inch scale length, or a Z2 could be based on a vintage Gibson theme with a vintage Gibson scale length and P90 pickups. But in terms of how it feels and how it functions and how it's designed, how it's made, the way it's made, it's the same guitar. Now, what's really important is the theme. The inspiration gives birth to the theme. So I'm inspired, and then I come up with a theme. Now, if you disturb anything about that, you've disturbed the theme of that guitar. If I want to make a Stratocaster style guitar, I want to follow certain specifications which defines that type of guitar. If I want to make a vintage Telly theme, you don't put a humbucker in the bridge position. You've just destroyed the whole theme. You know, if you have a 59 Les Paul, you don't paint it a sparkly color and put in high-powered humbuckers in it and locking tuners and a Floyd Rose. You've just done something very stupid because of your ignorance. Ignorance breeds stupidity and disaster. It's all because of ignorance. So you got to know your stuff. You got to respect tradition, and you got to respect the theme that guitar represents. Because whoever came up with the theme had the inspiration in the first place. You understand? But I basically only make one guitar. They all have the same DNA. So everything fundamentally is the same. It's one guitar. Now it does vary. The neck widths have been the same, consistent. The scale lengths can vary. The thickness, not the width, the thickness of the necks vary. Some of the contouring, as I explained, also varies because this is handmade. It's very different when the computerized machines are programmed to make a run of 1,000 guitars. 1,000 Joe Bonamassa Flying V's. Sprayed with plastic. And it's supposed to be a vintage-inspired instrument. Oh my God. There's two things, very important things missing. It's not made the way a vintage guitar was made. Vintage guitars were made like my guitars, by hand. Number two, vintage guitars were not sprayed with plastic, which always remains soft and never cures. So lucky you. Your $500 made in Asia glossy wonder guitar that you love so much has a big, thick plastic condom over it, and you will never, ever feel the wood. Good job. You did well. See, you gotta know your shit. You gotta know guitars. You gotta know your history. You gotta know your guitar history. You gotta know technically what the fuck is going on and how your guitar functions, every part of it. Otherwise, people can deceive you. Corporations can deceive you. And you'll just be as ignorant as you ever have been before. And your guitar is exactly the same as your friend's guitar. That doesn't happen here. So some things have to stay the same, but some things either deliberately or by the nature of hand craftsmanship does vary. And of course, don't forget, every guitar that I make varies because of the theme. They all have a different theme. Sometimes vastly different theme. Because they have vastly different inspiration. It's no different from writing music, writing songs. Every song has a different inspiration. But it is all written by the same person. It's simple. That's how it works. With me anyway. But fundamentally, it's the same guitar. With the same basic design in terms of how it feels and how it functions. Well, I love the concept of the thin line Telecaster. I love the concept of it. Something that looks hollow, but it really isn't, or whatever. It's semi-hollow, and it's got the F-hole on it. It's just a very sexy thing. It's a very exciting thing. I remember in 1978, believe it or not, walking into a music store, and I was just starting on the guitar and picking up a thin line Telly and going, "Oh my God, this is heaven. This is heaven." Of course, I could never afford it. I still remember the color of it and everything. So it stuck with me, and but then when I looked at the thin line telly in detail, I realized that it can be improved. And again, this is the ZT, meaning that it's not, it's a modified Telecaster. And again, the horn is cut. I mean, there's no reason to have that awkward horn sticking out right here, even though you guys are aesthetically used to that so much that it's odd for you if a guitar doesn't have it. I understand that. It's just a matter of you getting psychologically accustomed to seeing something a little bit different. But it makes a lot of sense because, again, the high fret axis, Telecasters have 21 frets, this has 24. Okay, I get a full 2 octaves, especially if you're playing an E, you're going to get the full 2 octaves. Again, the volume is very close to the bridge. Okay. Tone here, and then a simple Les Paul switch here, all in line with your picking motion. See, it's not bad, you know. And looking at the actual Fender thin line, I realized that both the back and the top are actually very thick. I don't want to forget to mention that on the Fender thin line and its many copies, the sides are also very thick. So I made the sides on my thin line type of tellies a lot thinner. So the whole thing is very resonant. It feels like a cigar box guitar when you play it. It's very, very cool. You know, you've got this very resonant body, acoustic in nature that you're playing, which you don't feel with the actual Fender thin line. It's a little deceiving because right here they make it thinner, just the outline of the F-hole, and then the rest of the top is thick. So if you reach in here, you think, oh yeah, it's pretty thin, but it's not that thin. So it's too thick, the sides, the back, and the top. So what I did is I made it a lot thinner. So this is very resonant. Okay, very, very resonant. And again, cut it away here, cut it away here. You get a lighter body. Great access. Here, you got the strap button in the same spot, but because of the cutaway, it sits more in. And the strap comes this way, so it never gets caught on this scoop here or anything like that because it goes behind it, right? Around your back. Balance is great. It's I do 2 thicknesses for Telecaster. Again, you know, being conscious and respectful of tradition. And again, the standard Telecaster is 1 3/4 inches thick, which I make, or I make a 40 millimeter thinner telly body, and it's okay because the prototypes that Leo Fender made were 40 millimeters, so it's just perfect. And so if I'm making a Telecaster from a heavier type of wood, well, you know what? I'm not going to make it 1 3/4 inches because it's going to be a heavy guitar. I'm going to take that one down to 40 millimeters. So you're going to save weight. This is, you know, with a thin line, it's not a problem because half of it is hollow. You know, weight is not a factor. And also, again, right here, this is made to be nice and rounded. What can I tell you? It just screams. Again, you're hearing this guitar being recorded with the microphone facing myself playing it, facing the guitar, and the amp is behind the microphone. And again, even this is now an external microphone. It is still a directional microphone. So you're hearing the guitar 50% acoustically, and it's a very acoustic, semi-hollow guitar with very thin top, back, and sides. So don't expect to hear a solid body with the speaker mic'd. That's the bridge, both. Not sure if the great tone is coming through because the microphone is pointed towards me so you can hear me talk. It's not pointed toward the amp, which is behind. It's not bad, but not the best. Neck. Oh, this is a big question. You guys are freaked out about this one. My God. Let me try to help you out here, okay? How did you settle on your headstock shape? Well, there's your first mistake right there. It doesn't really have much to do with shape. I didn't think of the shape and say, well, this is going to be a fantastic shape. I'm going to make my headstock this shape. It has to do with functionality. It has to do with the structure of the headstock of the entire neck. It has to do with the relationship of the headstock with the rest of the neck. And it's got nothing to do with shape. When you see a shape, that's because you don't go beyond that, and that's why you're not a guitar builder. And even if you build guitars, you're still not a guitar builder, because you didn't have the capacity to realize what it's all about. Let me tell you what it's all about. It has to do everything with design. The design dictates the shape. The design is absolutely revolutionary, and it is completely functional in design. There is really nothing better than this headstock. And I'll tell you why. In order to demonstrate that for you, let me show you. Again, I'm thinking that all this stuff is self-evident, but I guess it's not. If you got a guitar like a Gibson SG, right? Here it is. Okay? I was just working on this guitar the other day, and I had the strings off of it, and it was on my workbench. And I'm looking at this headstock, I'm going, and it freaked me out because I thought, oh my God, even if I dropped it a few inches, it's going to crack right here. First of all, this is a mahogany neck, as you know, and mahogany is a very soft and light wood, and therefore it's a weak wood. It's not like maple. Maple is a lot harder, a lot heavier, a lot stronger. But even that, you got here a tilted headstock, which you guys are visually very, very accustomed to. I understand that psychologically you're accustomed to that. So when you see something different, you go, ah, it's ugly, it's ugly, it's ugly. Well, let me explain. Let's just start with the shape of the headstock, okay? Now, if you look at the neck, okay, you only need, what is it, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, a board to make a neck. If you're going to add flares to the headstock and have a large headstock like this, you have to start with a neck blank twice as wide, okay? What a waste that is. Unless you, instead of doing that, you glue on some wings onto this headstock like PRS does, okay? Then you could use a narrower neck blank and just glue these on. But what a waste. What a waste of time. What a waste of effort. Okay, just to please you aesthetically. It's not functional. Okay. Now let me say that Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company is one of my idols. And the reason for that is that he was in love with simplicity, the way I am. And I went to the 100-year Ford celebration. It was 2005, I believe, in Detroit, Michigan. And they were telling stories about the Model T. They had like hundreds of antique Fords there on display. And you could talk to the owners, all this and all that. And they were telling stories, and they were saying that the Model T, now I don't know the exact story, I forget now, but it was something like the Model T wasn't fully assembled when it got to the dealer or to the actual owners, I'm not sure. And a lot of parts came in this crate, this wooden crate, which then you opened the crate, you took out the parts, I don't know what they were, headlights or whatever they were, and you assembled it onto the vehicle yourself, or the dealer did it back then. And what really struck with me is they said, well, the Ford Model T had a wooden floor. Wooden boards for the floor. And what you did is after you took the parts out of this crate, you disassembled the crate, and those were your perfectly sized floorboards. I go, oh my God, is that ever cool? So he didn't waste anything. You know, he had a famous quote, which I don't know the exact quote. I hope I can find it someday. I read it sometime years ago, and he said something, the more steps you can eliminate, the more ingenious, or the more innovative, the more advanced, the more practical, the more creative, the more groundbreaking, the more revolutionary. And simply, the more economical and practical your design will be. The more functional your design is, if you can reach the same result, the same effect, the same end goal, the same functionality, with as few steps as possible. You get it? That's what design is, or should be. So, the other problem is that, okay, so the first problem is you have to use neck blank, which is twice as wide. Just so you can have a wide headstock. Okay. The other even bigger problem is the tilted headstock. Okay. Now, you've heard of headstocks breaking. You probably maybe even had guitars with the headstocks breaking. Well, I'm not surprised. So when I was working on this guitar, I had it on my workbench, and I was saying, even if I push on it or drop it or it falls off the neck support, just like that, it's gonna crack. This is very soft wood, and it's extremely weak right in here. So if I wanted to, I could literally break it off right now, right in front of you here, just with pressure, even with my fingers. See, just pressing this way, holding this and pressing that way, I can break this headstock off. Now, I don't call that a good design, all right? And all the bullshit that goes along in making a tilted headstock. Now, Leo Fender was smarter in that. See, Leo Fender is the Henry Ford of guitar manufacturing. Everything was modular on the Fender, which is a great concept. Everything was simple as he could make it. And he did not have, in case you didn't notice, Fenders do not have a tilted headstock. Now, what Fenders do have is they have a totally straight headstock, but it's scooped down. Now, I went one step further. I even eliminated that scoop. I don't need that scoop to have the headstock on a lower plane than the fingerboard, because I use my retainer bar. A retainer bar in order to achieve the necessary break angle of the strings from the nut to the tuners. You get that, right? So everything on my guitars is in line. Now, why is that important to have the headstock in line with the rest of the neck? Why is that important? Well, what makes this tilted headstock so terribly weak? Well, it's got to do with the grain. Okay, now you see the grain here in the length of this neck. It's going this way, all in line. Okay, it's going this way. So if this headstock was straight, okay, you would not be breaking the grain. The structure, the direction of the grain will not be disturbed if the headstock is in line with the rest of the neck, all in one plane, all on one plane. You would not be ending the grain. As soon as you cut the piece of wood, as soon as you cut the board on an angle to make a tilted headstock, you will have broken the grain, the direction of the grain. There's nothing in terms of strength there anymore. You've now really compromised the integrity of the neck at the headstock. The grain runs out. See, how can I show this? The grain is going and it's stopping here, 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 right here. Okay? The grain is stopping there because the headstock is going downward. So the grain, instead of going all the way through the entire neck, the entire headstock, the entire length of the headstock, it's stopping right here where it's tilted. So it's extremely weak right here. So the grain is going, see, the grain is not tilted, is not angled, but the headstock is. So it's going boom, boom, boom. And then in the headstock, the grain is also going straight, but it's not following the angle of the headstock. So anyway, technical stuff aside, it makes it very weak right in here. Extremely weak. So if you've got a guitar stand and you knock it off the guitar stand, you're done. Your beautiful Gibson, your vintage Gibson, has now got a broken headstock, and you have just entered the league of famous guitar players, some of the best in the world, who have a broken Gibson headstock and claim that it actually sounds better than before it was broken. That's the new thing, anyway, to compensate for their loss or their stupidity. Well, I had it glued back on somehow. This guy did a fabulous job on it. And now I'm sure it even sounds better than before. Okay. A little bit of a assuagement going on right there. But anyway, so if you believe in that I would suggest break your Gibson headstock right now. In advance. It's going to break anyway. So, whatever. So, on a Zachary headstock, you can see everything is in line. Okay? The grain is unbroken all the way through. Nothing disturbs the grain. There's nothing going downwards where the grain would run out, right? Everything is in line. And what do I need? I need a very thin piece of wood. And if you're stupid enough to make a tilted headstock and use all the tooling, the jigs you got to make, the time it takes, you're no Henry Ford, let's put it that way, or Leo Fender. And I guess you're pleasing the viewers. They're going to say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. Okay, nice headstock. But so functionally, it's just a very practical thing, and it's a much better design, much stronger design, much functional design. Okay, and I get away with that by stringing the outer tuners the opposite way. You still tune the exact same way, right? In the mid-90s, I used to go on long road trips, and it was a long drive on the highway day after day. And during those drives, I was full-time planning the guitar out in my head. So I had this guitar designed before I actually built the guitars. And I knew that I wanted to reinvent the guitar, more or less. I didn't want to follow anybody. I'm not a follower. Now, if you're a follower, you're probably freaked out at this kind of behavior. And I understand. Our personalities are very different. But I wanted to reinvent the guitar, and I wanted to make a guitar functional, more functional than any other guitar ever made. I wanted a guitar simpler than any other guitar ever made. And I wanted to make it capable of high performance. And that's what I've done. Yet, at the same time, I wanted to respect and honor tradition for certain iconic models, which my guitars may be based on, but after the essential characteristics and specifications, that's where it stops. After that, it's all Zachary. You gotta understand that vintage guitars, we love their shapes, their body shapes. I do as well. And that's why I base my guitars, quite a few of them, on vintage body shapes. But that's where it stops, because vintage guitars were not made for modern playing. You gotta understand this. The frets weren't right. You know, you've got
19, 20, 21, 22 at the most frets. Only the necks are sometimes not right. The balance is often not right. Things like the SG, things like the Firebird, they're terribly balanced. They're neck-heavy guitars. And because of nostalgia, players and consumers overlook that. Oh my God, they give it a pass. But every vintage guitar needs serious update to modern standards, to modern playing standards even. So there's a lot to fix. There is the essentials to keep, but a lot to modify and bring it up to date. And that's what I do. The Zachary Headstock, and you didn't pick up on this, shame on you. It's because you hang out on guitar forums. It's not going to get you smart. No. You got to initiate everything yourself. You got to go to a higher level than that, than everybody else. And you didn't realize the benefits of the Zachary Headstock. But now you're smarter. And you didn't hear this on a guitar forum. So the Zachary Uniplane Headstock. It's one of the greatest features of the Zachary guitar. And I've had this from day one. I knew there is no fucking way I'm going to make a tilted headstock. No fucking way. I don't got the patience for that, my friend. I want to build a guitar and play it. That's what I want to do. Well, then you could argue that it's got better tone. The grain runs straight all the way through the neck, unbroken, including through the entire headstock. Now, how does that affect the resonance of the neck of the guitar? Obviously, there's no tuning issues involved here to worry about. So the headstock shape he was wondering about, it's just rounding it off. You know, it's rounding it off, that's all. You know, it looks like somebody early on told me when I first started building, he says it looks like he's into martial arts. He says it looks like a samurai, so he called it a samurai headstock. So I went with that. Or it looks like a dildo even. Doesn't matter. It works, and it works good. Now, if you're somewhat insecure about your own sexuality, you don't feel like a real man, you're in your 20s and already you're dropping testosterone at an alarming rate. I mean, that's another issue. You're doubting your gender. You know, the aliens made you doubt your own gender. You're thinking about transitioning maybe to another gender. Then I guess the shape of my headstock may arouse some kind of a conflict within you. Sorry about that. Okay, so the second part of this question is stamping your brand name on the body instead of the headstock. Well, there's no real room here, right? That should be obvious too. So just put a Z, which is the logo, and then you put Zachary Guitars right in the body. It works out really good. Stamping is great. Again, it's simple and it's fast. That's all the questions, I think. I don't know what else I can tell you. If something is still not clear, go ahead. Ask me some more questions if you like. I may have missed a few things here and there. That's it. That's it, I think. So, thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you soon. See ya.
Both pickups, single coil. Bridge, humbucker.